Welcome everybody, thanks for tuning into the loamwolf.com. Today we are going to be going over our long-term review of the Scorpion eMTB tires by Pirelli. Now these are an E-specific tire that Pirelli has made. We have the S up front and the R in the rear. These tires are available in either a 29 or a 27.5 inch wheel size and only in a 2.6 inch wide width. Obviously on our pivot shuttle here, we've got the 29ers on the bike. The S is going to be a slightly more aggressive, widely spaced blocks. And the rear tire, which is the R, is going to be a lower profile, much tighter, closer together pattern. It's going to roll quick, going to offer a lot of performance advantages on hard packed terrain and do pretty well on softer soil as well. It did have an Achilles heel and definitely something that holds the tire back in our opinion, but we'll get to that later. So before we get into why we don't love these tires, we're just gonna go over some of the technology that can be found in the tires and also give you guys, I guess, a little bit of suggestions for who this tire might be ideal for, since it wasn't great for us and our terrain. So first up, Pirelli, obviously a very legendary tire manufacturer in the racing world. Not just bicycles, but cars through motorcycles have a lengthy history and knowledge at putting together round pieces of rubber. So we were really excited when these showed up, very optimistic that they would perform incredibly well. And you know, in some situations they did. Pirelli has used lignin in their rubber compound, which is a naturally sourced chemical and something that they say will help improve grip, traction, as well as enhance the durability and longevity of the tire, making it a little bit more robust, especially in the demands of an e-bike application with the added torque and weight, you know, braking and accelerating, just the extra miles that e-bikes naturally put down because you're riding them a ton more because they're awesome. Another thing that they did is their Hyperwall technology. That was an awesome feature, actually. We really did enjoy the Hyperwall on these tires. We experimented with pretty low pressures. Typically, we ran these tires in the 20-ish pound range to 22. We've got a lot of very rocky terrain here in Central Oregon. There's a lot of sharp lava rocks. And although, you know, we've seen videos of some of the GMBN guys or eMBN guys going down as low as like 10 or 12 PSI, that's not a realistic spot to where aggressive riders are going to be riding this tire, just plain and simple. Sure, the climbing traction will be great, but you're going to roll and squirm and you are going to go through that tire into that rim, and that's not where you want to be. So when you're in the 18-ish, 16 to 18 range, you still get really good support. And that's an impressive number, honestly. A lot of tires we've ridden don't do well in that 16 to 18 range without inserts. You know, they start to squirm and roll around a little bit, and we found these tires did very well even with those lower pressures. So props to Pirelli for making a really nice stiff sidewall that can hold, support, and give riders kind of what they need on these heavier e-bikes. So moving on to some of the features on how they ride, the eMTB R, which is what we have out back. Again, it's a tighter, lower profile tread pattern. We think that's gonna do the best for riders who maybe live on really hard pack soil. You know, a lot of guys down in Southern California will probably like that tire. It is gonna roll fast, you're gonna get a longer range out of the bike, and they're just gonna be really fast performing tires. So solid for hard pack. If you have like some pretty soft, nice soil, you know, preferably not a lot of roots or loose rocks, it could do well there. If you get into like any sort of wet rock or root, mostly wet rocks, like if you're on slabs of granite, not gonna do so well there. And the real nemesis that we found out of this rear tire is very steep, loose, marbly terrain. So while we do like the R for hard pack terrain, rolling speed, a pretty consistent feel, throughout the whole tire, we're gonna cut away to a prime example of where these tires do not perform well. You're gonna hear me talking to Alex. It was his first ride on this bike and these tires, and hopefully give you guys a little perspective on how steep that test track is and what those rock and soil conditions look like, so you can kind of gauge if that's anything similar to what you guys deal with at home. Okay folks, we're about to drop in and you can see all the loose marbles here. That's kind of what we're talking about. This is where these tires really struggle, is that loose stuff over the hard pack. Especially the rear, there is not a lot of braking power. It just kind of skips on top. Good news is that they roll real fast. Thanks, guys.
Pirelli's interesting feeling.
Yeah.
Pretty loose, vague feeling in the front. Grip is decent, but it's definitely not the traditional, progressive loss of traction.
Yeah, it's an interesting front. I mean, you can see the blocks are pretty widely spaced, also kind of rounded. I know we kind of talked about that yesterday, but it's like a weird feeling of like you get it over on the shoulder, and like it kind of feels like you're losing traction and about to go down, but you don't actually lose traction. Like
at one point in one of those corners, I had moved 6-8 inches over, and it felt like I was completely losing it, but it was just like in between knobs was traveling up.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Yeah, it's vague and uncertain, I guess would be good words to describe that.
It's not something.
The flip side is that we never lost the front end.
No.
Like it never went anywhere. You just mentally, like, you just don't feel like they're working.
I didn't feel confidence inspired. Like it wasn't like jumping on a set of brand new super sticky tires.
Yeah. And this rear,
like you can already see the problem here.
Yeah.
But despite that, it had pretty good braking action.
Yeah.
Because of these big bars.
How about the climbing?
As soon as you get off these center knobs and out here, it just washes out. Yeah. So you have to stay pretty much upright for your climbing. That being said, though, these are not tall knobs. No. So it is pretty fast. It is a fast rolling tire. If you're climbing in the loose, oh, it will. You're spinning. Yeah, you'll be spinning. Like, luckily, it's so, look at this dirt. It's just so grippy today. Yeah. But man, if it was any looser, you'd just be spun. Okay. So as you can see, the trails we've been riding obviously aren't all on that mountain, but that particular mountain has a lot of super loose, just marbly terrain and some very sharp rocks as well. And that's just where we found these tires to be less than ideal. So if that's not a place that you find yourself riding a lot, and you spend more time on hard packed or softer terrain, you're gonna really like how fast these roll, how well they pedal. And that's only gonna be complemented by the nice sidewall support from that Hyperwall. But
definitely a deal breaker for us on those steep, loose terrain. As you'll see here in our video, a lot of the riding we had is very steep, lots of small marbly rock. And although it did pretty okay climbing, as soon as it got time to try to control the bike speed, slow down for corners, that rear tire just lacked any penetration, bite, and the compound just felt a little bit too hard. And it was fun, and we enjoyed kind of like that ski style of just sliding the bike into corners and using that as a speed check, but it didn't bring a lot of confidence to our test riders when we felt like we really needed to stop or get our speed down to make a turn or get around an obstacle. So if you live in an area with a lot of steep, loose over conditions, that's not going to be your tire. So moving up to the front, the eMTB S, again, a lot of the same Hyperwall, Smart Grip Plus technologies will be found, but a much more aggressive knob, spacing, height, everything. I mean, it's a pretty burly looking tire. You look at this thing and it almost reminds me of like the old Velociraptors, like on steroids, if you remember those tires. I might be dating myself there, but one thing it is not is a Minion clone. So again, props to Pirelli for making something that's not another Minion. That being said, this tire has some strengths, and it also has a couple weaknesses that sort of hold it back from, us wanting to keep it on our bike and keep riding it. So what it does well, braking. It is a very strong braking tire. It has a pretty solid braking edge, even though it's on the front. We've been treated to some nice winter conditions lately. So some of our trails have been soft, not super loose and rocky. So when we got into those kind of softer soil terrain trails, we could brake really hard with that front end and just almost feel the bike just diving down as that tire just grabbed the earth. Also, what it does well is it rolls pretty nicely. It's a pretty consistent, fast rolling tire. It's got some nice ramps on it. That center has a pretty good spacing. So it's not like a, mutter where it's just like bogging down as you go down the trail. It has great grip when you are down over on the side, but getting there is scary. It's not like that weird float zone effect that you get on the Minion. It just feels like the tire is going to wash out, but then it doesn't. It actually grabs and hooks. It was a pretty weird feeling, and we gave the bike to a few different guys. We didn't tell them anything about it, which is kind of normal. We don't like to, subconsciously have our guys looking for stuff, but they all just said that there's kind of a vague feeling out of that front tire when you go over into the cornering position. And it just, when you're looking over the tire, the side knobs do seem like they're pretty far over. So it could be that you're just, once you get way over there, they start to, move and form with that sidewall as it's kind of compressing, but it's an interesting feeling, and we've tried to figure out the best way to word it for you guys, but just vague is the best way we can describe it. It's like you think the front tire is going and you're about to lose that tire, but before you unclip or put your foot out, it just grabs and then it keeps going. So it's cool because it grips, but not cool because of that feeling. It just takes away the confidence, much like the rear does on those kind of loose, steep terrain. So not much else we can really say about that other than it's kind of a weird, vague feeling tire getting it over into the corners. If you live in an area that's got a lot of deeper soil, loamy conditions, if you're not on harder pack terrain, or maybe you have some more sandy kind of, kitty litter mammoth-ish kind of stuff, it'll do well there. We did find that it performed well in some areas, but for our terrain and riding, the large a large percentage of the time that we're riding this tire is on kind of mixed terrain where you're not sinking down deep enough to get that constant predictive feel, and it's just too vague for us to really want to keep that tire on there. So I know it's a bit of a bummer. Hopefully we don't sour those tires out for you too much. Again, there are some conditions where they may do well for you. We just didn't find that they were our conditions. So that being said, these tires, again, 29 or 27.5 by 2.6 options. They retail for $79, which is a pretty solid price, actually. You know, as a lot of tires this day and age are in that 90 to 110 range, having something in that $79 price point is pretty awesome. So that's a nice feature about these tires. They last a very long time. You know, we've got quite a few miles on this bike, and honestly, I can't say they look like they've been used all that much. So sidewall protection is great. Wear life is great. Rolling speed, impressive. But as you heard, we've got some critiques that I mentioned before, and that's kind of the reason that these tires are not for us. Thank you guys again for watching the review. Thanks to Pirelli for sending out these tires. It was a lot of fun riding them, get to learn how they performed out on our trails. Be sure to subscribe for future reviews and other video content coming out regularly on our channel. Thank you guys for watching, and we hope to see you out on the trails.